Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm calling to order the October 8th Recovery Task Force meeting, and we'll be starting at 4:02. So the first thing I'd like to do is take the roll call. So please unmute yourself and say here when I call your name. Jason?
Here.
Thanks. Marisol? I don't believe she is on at this time. Mike?
I'm here.
Thank you. Nina?
Here.
Great. Pavel?
I'm here.
Thank you. Issaquah? Trish? I know you're here. I'm assuming maybe you're having a hard time with the mute, so weigh in when you
Mayor
can.
Polly, can you hear me?
Is that Trish?
Because I'm not hearing anybody.
Oh, Ron, we can hear you. I'm not sure why you wouldn't have our audio. Joanne, is that something you're able to look at for Ron? Can you send Ron a message in the chat and let him know that we can hear him? And maybe Gabe might be able to, somebody might be able to help Ron figure out why he is not getting audio.
Okay, you can hear me, but I can't hear you. Oh, that'll be interesting. Let me see what's going on here. I'm very sorry.
I'm going to keep going down the list. Trish, were you able to unmute yourself?
Well, can you hear me now?
I can. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Brookie
cool.
Scholl is excused today. Grace?
Here.
Nice to see you, Grace. Janine is also excused today. Shashi?
Here.
Thank you. Marlene?
Must be. It has the wrong
Here.
speakers, I think.
And
Okay, I will. I'll try. I'll log off and come back on real quick. Sorry.
That's okay. Ron Paul? Stephanie Saleman? Great. Okay, we do have a quorum, and also I know there are a few folks who have to leave early today, so if you could use the chat box when you leave just to let Joanne know that you are leaving, then she'll record that in the minutes. I'd also like to acknowledge that we have some staff participating in today's call. City Administrator Wally Bobkowitz is with us, Assistant to the City Administrator Autumn Monahan, I believe, yeah, Autumn's on here, Executive Assistant Joanne Biscara, and Gabe is running the audiovisual today. Thank you, Gabe. We do have a few speakers here today for our team, which is great, and we will introduce them under each of the topics under regular business. So the first item for today is the approval of the minutes. Is there any objection to approving the September 10th, 2020 meeting minutes, which were provided in the online agenda? And I will open up the chat since I hadn't do that. Okay. Seeing no objections, the minutes are approved as presented. Joanne, has anyone signed up for the public comment portion of our meeting?
No, we have no one. Thank you.
Thank you. So then we will move into our agenda items today. We might change the order a little bit. It will be very hard for Ron to participate if he can't hear us. However, we may be able to use the chat box to ask questions and let him answer. But we'll give him a few seconds. We have Carla Carroll with us today, the Government and External Affairs Director for Comcast. And City Minister Bobkowitz, are we doing any introductions on the topics or just launching right in?
Madam Mayor, members of the task force, good afternoon. Autumn Monahan, the assistant to the city administrator, one of her responsibilities is our relationship with Comcast. So Autumn, if you wouldn't mind starting off, I see Joanne may have a comment before we start. Joanne?
Yes, I see Superintendent Thiele is back on the line. If he's hearing us, I would propose we start with him. He needs to leave this call by 4:30 today.
Thank you very much, Joanne. So, Ron, you mastered the technology. Welcome.
A little embarrassing there, everybody, but sorry, it took me a few minutes there to get in. Can you all hear me okay now?
We can hear you fine. Thank you. So, Administrator, did you want to do any introduction, or we just move right into Superintendent Thiele's update on what's going on?
If I may, Madam Mayor, just a quick preamble for all the speakers that we have today. At the last task force meeting, you raised a couple specific questions dealing with the schools, dealing with the internet infrastructure, and also what we can do to be helpful to those in need that we see. So 3 of our speakers are really there to address those issues. So Superintendent Thiele is here at the task force's request just to give an update on what's going on. So with that, Ron, go right ahead.
Great, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to provide an update and help keep our community informed about what's going on in the school district. We do have a board meeting here starting in about 90 minutes too. So I appreciate you allowing me to jump on the front of your meeting here. Just to touch briefly on that topic of connectivity, I will say it seems to be working better than what I was fearful might happen. We do have about 1,300 hotspots that we have distributed out to community members that were having connectivity issues. But I was fearful of just a complete meltdown that was going to shut our system down, and that hasn't happened. So I'm really pleased with that. We've gotten very good feedback on our ISD Live, or our remote start to the school year, and a lot of hard work from my staff, my teachers, and everybody to make that happen. And so I was very concerned about that internet connectivity issue. On the bigger, broader aspect of that, I will say it is a concern for me as just a public educator. The more that we are relying on the internet and everything, and I believe some of this reliance will continue for quite a while, I do worry about that infrastructure. And even though we seem to be doing fairly well here in the Issaquah School District, I worry about it regionally and across the state, and frankly across the nation as well. So I'm glad to hear a lot of our political leaders that are taking up that issue. Specifically in the school district, what I wanted to share with you all today was we are now in our second week where we have brought back some of our special needs students, some of our most impacted special needs students, those that spend a lot of their day in the regular brick and mortar world in a self-contained classroom. And the rationale for those students is, you might imagine they're some of the students that struggle the most to try to learn in a remote setting. And our board was really clear when they passed the resolution accepting my recommendation for a remote start, that they wanted us to continue to work to try to get those furthest away from educational equity or justice, to serve them the best we could. And I would argue for many of our students, in person, even in a hybrid model, is the best we can do. So we prioritized who we thought those students were in our system, and then we set about plans to work to bring them back in. So as I mentioned, we had a goal of the week of the 28th and starting on the 29th of September, bringing back what we refer to as our Learning Resource 2, LRC2 students, are those self-contained students. Our Academy for Community Transition, those are our 18 to 21-year-old special needs students who are in the Transition or ACT program. And our youngest preschool special needs students are ECE students. We were successful in bringing back our middle school and our ACT program, and we have students who are attending 4 days a week in those programs. We don't have them there on Wednesdays, and it is a shortened day as well. We're not doing food services yet in the buildings, where of course we have our food service distribution. Thousands of meals are going out, but not in the schools themselves. So I'm really happy about that we do have those students in. We had a staffing issue with our paraprofessionals that didn't allow us to bring back our elementary LRC2 and our high school LRC2. I believe, fingers crossed, we've resolved that issue. And my hope is that tomorrow I'll be pushing out a communication that says those LRC elementary and high school students will be coming back next week. if I had to guess, it would probably be next Thursday, the 15th. You may have seen also back on September 17th, I pushed out a message saying that I have a goal of getting our kindergarten and first grade students back in by October 15th. That was a pretty aggressive goal at the time, and I took some flack for it, frankly. And but I think I needed to push the process along. I knew that that was going to be a challenge. And while I'm not saying that we won't meet that, I will tell you, and what I'll be sharing tonight with the public, is that we are still in talks with IEA, our Teachers Association, and I think we're making good progress, but it is very complex. We surveyed all of our parents of our K-3 students and all of our K-3 teachers to see who wanted to stay fully remote, who wanted to go into the hybrid. And our survey, we had about 55% of our families say they wanted to come in, about 45% say they wanted to stay fully remote. We had about 75% of our teachers say they would work in person, and about 25% who, for some reason or other, they may not be able to. They may have a underlying health condition or something that wouldn't make it appropriate. Now we're in the process of matching and rebuilding all these classes, the remote and the hybrid. One concern we've heard is, it could cause a change in teachers. And the good news is people love their teachers in Issaquah, and that warms my heart. And so they don't want to change them when they get to know them. But of course, if your teacher's going in and you want to stay remote, there's not a whole lot we can do about that. But we are going to use a process by which when we create our classes, and those of you who've had children in the schools know, we're pretty firm on, you don't get to change those. But given the uniqueness of this time, at least right now, the thinking is we'll create those, our principals and building staff will create those classes. They'll push it out. So for example, as a parent, you'll say, okay, here's your child's assignment. It may be their current teacher, it may not. But we're going to try to honor people's wishes. But then once that's out, if we have some play, assuming space available, we'll continue to engage in conversation. So for example, I said I wanted to be in person. My teacher went remote. If I could, I'd like to stay with my teacher. Is that a possibility? So we're going to allow those conversations to happen. That will delay our process a bit. So while I'm not making an announcement here because I don't want to get ahead of my bargaining team who's going to be in tomorrow morning, again with our Teachers Association, I think it's likely that date's going to get pushed. I don't know exactly to how far out and it will get, or how far out it might get pushed, but I think that's likely. But if the date has to get pushed because we have good progress made in our talks, good agreements are being reached, we're able to work and honor some of the desires of our families, I think that will be worth it. We're talking about approximately, I want to say 3,400 students in the K-1 of our school system. And so you figure about half of that, or 1,700 would be in person then, joining the 150 to 200 that are in right now. So as you can see, we're a district of approximately 20,000 students. My hope would be we'd have about 10% of them in-person hybrid learning, those that want to. Sometime by, early to mid-November, I think is probably more realistic. Again, maybe they'll come out of the session tomorrow and say, oh no, Ron, we're ready to go, or we think we can do it by an earlier date than that. So I'm just going to hedge a little bit on that. So that's kind of where that process is at.
Ron, I want to thank you for that update and also be respectful of your time. I have a very curious group of people here.
Yes.
So I want to make sure that they get their questions in. But before we start the questions, I just want you to know how much I appreciate the amount of work you and your board have done to try and master this monster of a year that we have been given. Your efforts and your collaboration have not gone unnoticed. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I'm going to dip in with comment and questions. And if we have some time at the end, Ron, and there's something that you would like to add on at the end, that would be great. Let's start with Marlene.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor. Superintendent, I just wanted to first start by saying, I was a little apprehensive about how the school year was going to go, and I think the teachers and staff have done an amazing job with the online learning, so it exceeded my expectations. So wanted to start by just saying great job from kind of up and down the district on that. My question as it relates, I have elementary students, not in the K through 3 who had to take the survey. Curious if there will be another survey for the older groups. And then I guess I have a question about the hybrid model itself. Knowing that the students will be in class, about 3 hours, or that will be about the amount of time that they're there, knowing there's some process time with getting them in to wash their hands, recess, all those things. It seems like we'd end up with about 2.5 hours of classroom teaching. Currently, my student is getting about 5 hours, and that's a mix of all that time is with the teacher. The teacher is available on Zoom. They're doing small groups based on their reading level. I'm just curious about the learning outcomes going to 2.5 hours versus what they're doing right now.
Yeah, thank you for that, Marlene, and I'm glad you're having a good experience with the remote learning. We pushed out that draft schedule because we wanted to help parents get a sense of what it might look like. I do want to be clear that that schedule has not been agreed to at the bargaining table. But you're right. The draft that we pushed out was for 3 hours. Now, I would remind you that in the hybrid, there would still be virtual and asynchronous learning happening as well. So there would still be a component of the virtual learning that you're experiencing that would.
But the teachers wouldn't be there, would they? Because wouldn't they be teaching the other cohort? So the teachers wouldn't be available.
On Wednesdays, on Wednesdays, that would be a non-in-person day. So that the draft schedule that we were working from, and again, I want to be clear, that schedule may not be the final schedule. We also have drafts of schedules that have a lot more time and go 5 days a week. So that's kind of where the discussions are right now. But in that draft we shared, you're correct. It would be 3 hours of direct instruction time in the classroom. And you're right. Those little ones will be learning how to do school. They'll be learning how to line up in a physical distance manner and take mask breaks outside and all of that. So, but I think that's important learning for them too. But then their specialist time would still happen virtually. So their PE, music, all of that would be virtual. So there would be that time. There would be the whole class together again on Wednesday, virtual learning as well. So the time actually works out about the same. The difference is the way we envision it would be most of the core academic subjects, reading, math, and science, would be taught in that in-person setting. And as I said, some of the social emotional lessons, and some of the specialists would happen in the virtual, and then there would still be some asynchronous activities and lessons that would be pushed out as well. But again, I don't want to land too much on that draft schedule, because I've seen draft schedules that also have the kids in 3.5 hours a day, 5 days a week, or 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. So I don't know exactly where it will land. I will tell you, Marlene, one of the goals, and I've had this conversation with the board as well, is to try to parallel. We're trying to create about a 6 to 6.5 hour day experience. Of course, we don't want 5-year-olds in front of the computer for that long, which would mirror the school day. And whether it will be all virtual or whether it would be a mix of the two, we're trying to, I understand what you're saying. I don't want the hybrid to be a lesser option, if you will.
Thank you, Superintendent. Jason, up with a question.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. Thank you, Superintendent Thiele. Unfortunately, I don't have any children of my own at this point. So I'm going to ask two different type of questions, and really one's just about more public health, and then the other one because of my love of planning. So as far as public health, is there like a situation where you could have like a drive at the school with registered nurses to help inoculate kids whether it's the coming flu shots or possibly, God willing, a COVID-19 vaccine. Is that something that the school district could work in tandem with Swedish or our medical providers? And then
And public health.
Yeah, public health, because again, we know that our little ones are not they're as susceptible as anybody else. So getting them vaccinated, possibly working with the school district, because you guys do play such an important part of their lives, obviously with parents' permission. And then the second question, Superintendent Thiele, is there's been a little bit of talk because of the remote learning. Has there even been conversations as far as what holidays might look like in the future because of this new tool in the tool belt that you guys have? Because that'll obviously have a direct impact on parents when they decide to try and take their children for vacation. So just wondering, again, because I don't have children of my own, so these are more or less just questions for me.
Sure.
Ron, before you start to answer on Jason's questions, I want to let you know you have another 4 or 5 lined up. So we hope to keep you through 4:30. So want to make sure you have time for all your answers.
Great.
Go ahead.
The mayor knows me well. She knows I get a bit long-winded. The short answer to the vaccinations, I would say, would be yes. If we've done that, and we've been doing that for a number of years for the staff, Jason, not for the students, but we've set up flu shot clinics. We do them in all of our buildings, essentially, and it's a little different now. Of course, it would have to be, like you say, a drive-through or something, since most of my staff aren't working in the buildings. It is something we can do. When I was young, we used to get vaccinated in school, and with that, I don't know why that went away, to be honest with you. I've been in the business now for 32 years, and I've never been associated with a school that administers vaccines in that way. I don't know if there was some legislation or if it was just a concern from our insurance pools or whatever it is. But I do think, given the unique times of COVID, and if and when, I don't want to say if, but when a vaccine comes, if we could be an aid in the distribution of that, that would make a lot of sense. I don't know exactly how that would work, but we would be open to it. On your second question, related about vacations or maybe even snow day closures and things like that, because I think a lot of what we do virtually, like using a learning management system, will stay with us even when we go back to brick and mortar education. I think there are aspects of what we're doing. I think that's an interesting, a real interesting thought. Like, if we knew a big snowstorm was coming and we could say, okay, we're going to flip the switch over and be virtual for the next 3 days so we can keep learning and not lose school days, I'm very much intrigued by that idea. Right now, the way funding works, that would not we would probably need some legislative changes to be able to do that, Jason. It's an interesting thing, but funding in public ed, which we're under waivers right now, of course, has a lot to do with in-person attendance. And we are required to have 180 days of school. That's the law, and that's the minimum. And those are considered in-person days. But of course, right now we're working under a waiver. But I've heard others talk about that, Jason. I'm interested in something like that. I would love it because, it seems like we get more and more weather issues as time goes forward. But right now, that would require some policy and legal changes. But I know people are talking about it.
Well, Superintendent Thiele, if what you need is support from the mayors within your school district too, we would love to go and help lobby for additional waivers, because these are the things that are important to the community and to the parents right now. The next question is coming from Mike Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor Pauly. Thank you for joining us, Superintendent Thiele. Somebody told me once that one of the most difficult jobs is being a school superintendent. And I think that was without a pandemic. So really appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
This is a kind of a broad question. If you could motivate or engage the community in some way that would be of most help to the school, what would that be? What would you ask them to do? What would you ask from the community to do?
Wow, that's a great question, Mike. I mean, historically, in our brick and mortar world, we've had such wonderful volunteerism from our parent community and our PTSAs. There were times when, we're like the 12th or 13th largest district in the state, and we had the second highest PTSA enrollment. In fact, someone in this call with us today was a former PTSA president of mine and very active in that world. And that the volunteerism is just a tremendous help to us. So, and then I will say the other thing beyond our parent community is working with our service clubs and organizations, in our cities, our Kiwanis, our Rotary, as they step up and they become mentors in our Voice Mentor program. That's a great way to help out as they give us their time as volunteers and in some cases their treasure in terms of funding opportunities to support programs. And the best avenue to go through that, I think, is with our schools foundation. So, I know it's just a reality, Mike, because of the way public school is set up in Washington State and most of America. When it comes time for us to put a proposal before the voters, whether it be a levy or a bond, take the time to fully understand it, ask questions about it, and then get out and vote. You notice I didn't say how to vote, but to get out and vote in support of our democracy, and just make yourself aware of it. That's the best thing. About 72% of the people that live in our community don't have children in our schools. Mm-hmm. So we do rely on the non-parent community, like Jason, to help us too. And anybody can volunteer. We'll put you through a process when we get back to that. Right now you can't. I'm sorry. It's not COVID friendly. But I think those would be some of just off the top of my head. If I had more time, I could probably think of some more ways too, Mike.
Those are great. And Superintendent, we do share these meetings with the public through social media after, so I'm sure there will be a lot of people tuning in to hear your answers. We have 2 more questions. Shashi is next with a question and a comment, followed by Marisol, and then we'll probably have to wrap it up. Shashi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor Polly, and thank you, Ron, for a very good update. I'm glad students are coming. They must be excited, but also there's fear, a lot of fear. My comment first is that I really would like to see the elementary school children coming very soon. They could be difficult to control. And you said these children are 18, 19, 21, something. That's still, little better age because they'll be more cooperative. And my question is, how are you going to monitor their safety? For example, suddenly a parent calls and says our child is not coming because he's got fever, and then he's tested positive. Now last 5 to 10 days he was in school. So what kind of contact tracing, or how are you going to go about it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we do have a process by which when anybody enters our buildings, they have to take an attestation. And the parents would have to do that for their children before each school day. It comes in the form of a text or an email. We've even been able to provide hard copy for some families where they have to answer a series of questions about their health. And then we take the temperature of everybody as they enter our building. So we try to keep sick people, to be blunt about it, out of the buildings. Now, you gave a scenario in which they could have been asymptomatic or something too, and have been in school. You may have seen that just last week in one of our middle schools, we actually had 2 cases of COVID on the staff side. And we follow, and this was in some of the messages I've sent out, there's something called the Public Health Toolkit, which is a very comprehensive document that guides us on what to do in the event that a suspected or a confirmed case of COVID happens in our building. So the example that we had last week was we had 2 staff members, one first and then the second, who one didn't feel well at school. So we have a process by which we essentially quarantine those individuals, get them out of the main right away. We do request that they get a test, and we'll help them with that. And in this case, they did. The other individual who worked closely didn't come into the school, but then ultimately tested positive. We were monitoring, and we had a third person, which is why I closed the school. Because technically I wouldn't have had to close the school, because we were able to isolate where they were in the school, clean those areas, and keep the rest of the building safe. But I had a situation where I had a person who had contact with even some of the other teaching staff. And we didn't know yet. And so we had a 3-day lag on the test, so I had to close that facility down. We opened it back up Monday morning to staff, and I'm happy to say we had the students back in there today, and they were very happy to be back in school. So it's the public health toolkit, just so you know, that is the guide that we follow for those very specific those situations, and it's quite complex, and it doesn't answer everything, but I felt like we had a pretty good test last week, and knock wood, we passed it.
Thank you, Superintendent. And this is just a comment for Autumn. If we're going to put some links out, it might be great to add the link to the reference that the Superintendent just made to the guidance that they're using. Last question from Marisol.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. This is Marisol Fisher, and thank you, Superintendent Thiele, for coming and talking to us and sharing all these great updates. My question is for parents who perhaps feel that they, parents who, I'm a mother of 3. I have 3 kids in completely different levels. My oldest one is a high schooler, and my youngest is in preschool. And there is a lot of us who are feeling overwhelmed with all the time that our kids are spending in front of the computer, not only because they are spending the time, but because we have to be there with them. And if you have different levels, it's hard. So my question is there a place where they can bring, I don't want to say concern, but their feeling about how school is working for them? And I wonder if you have already heard any of these feelings. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's great to see you again, Marisol. Yes, you are not the only person. You're not alone in what you're experiencing or feeling. I can assure you of that. And I think it varies. I think it ebbs and flows. Sometimes it's going well for a family, and other times it's a real struggle. That's why I'm committed to trying to get as many kids in person, because even to a shorter day could be in your case, for example, I don't know if you have a K or a 1, but what if 4 hours a day your kindergartner was able to get on a school bus and you felt safe about it and good about it and go and get the support they need? That would even be a respite for your other children, perhaps, and allow you. So I think ultimately getting more kids into school is the answer. I would encourage you or your children, depending on the age, to reach out to your school counselor. I know I've seen lots of messages, the counselors, the PBSES coaches are pushing out. Don't be shy about asking for help from people. We want to help. You know that we're doing social emotional learning lessons and stuff, trying to help the kids that way. And also feel like, we push that asynchronous learning, which one of the nice things is the state has given us a waiver. So if your child if it doesn't work for you to log in at 9:10 in the morning and stay there, and you need to access their learning maybe at 6 o'clock in the evening or something, you can do that and it counts for attendance. So we want you to have that flexibility as well. That is, I wish there was more I could do. I wish that I could just drive those buses around and pick those kiddos up and keep them in school for 6.5 hours a day and return life to normal. But until we get on the other side of this pandemic, I'm sorry. I think, and particularly for older 10 and older kids, it's going to be a little harder, because we also use the public health decision tree to guide our decisions, and we know we've got to get that COVID cases per 100,000 down, and we got to get that spread rate down before we can start hopefully returning to more normal routines. But please do reach out to your school counselor. Reach out to the administrator too. We have administrators, we have counselors, we have PBSES coaches, and then there are district office staff. We want to help. I don't want you to suffer in silence out there. And even if we don't have great solutions for you, maybe somebody to talk to. So please do take advantage of those resources that are there, and let's try to get some kiddos back in school. So if we all do the right thing, mask up, keep our physical distance, do what we need to do. Let's drive that virus rate back down in our community, because that's really key to getting our kids back in.
Thank you, Superintendent Thiele. And Marisol, thank you for the question. We talk a lot about, essential workers and those that are on the front lines, but since March, parents have been on the front line. Anybody who's got kids in school has been doing double duty and trying to juggle way more things than is practically possible. So maybe we will have to have some sort of, recognition for all those at-home teachers who are still doing their job and still doing chores, and kids in all different grades, because you guys are really, it's a Herculean lift, and we know it, and it's got to be tiring. So if there's any way that we can make connections or support groups to share ideas, let us know, because I just can't imagine how hard it is for you.
Absolutely.
Superintendent Thiele, I had one last quick question for you, and it's just that you're probably having to make modifications to schools, and I'm just wondering, you still have not received any CARES Act dollars for any sort of
No, we
modifications?
actually, last
Okay, you did?
we received about $500,000,
Okay.
and that was mostly used to purchase personal protective
Yeah.
equipment.
Okay.
And so, we did receive some of that.
Right. Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming again today. I know you're super busy. I know this is every day is something is changing on you, but this group was extremely curious about the transition back to school, fully remote, and now as you move through these different phases. So we'd love to have you back again when there's another phase change. Let the group ask you some more questions, and really appreciate your time today, and good luck with your board meeting tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm happy to come back when we have something more to report. And again, thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
healthy.
Superintendent.
Take care.
So I see Carla Carroll has turned on her camera. So we are moving on to our second agenda item this evening. We're a little bit behind, but there was a ton of questions and I didn't feel like cutting anybody off. This is a Comcast services update, and we'll start with an introduction from Autumn Monahan, who manages all of our communications, for an introduction to the topic. Autumn.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. So a few meetings ago, some questions came up about Comcast service, specifically on Squawk Mountain. And we're all super reliant right now on our internet service, me included. So we have invited Carla, who's the Director of Government and External Affairs at Comcast, to provide us an update of their work in the area. There's been a whole lot of work happening on Squawk. So with that, Carla, thanks for being here today.
Great. Thank you, Autumn. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So I am going to try to share my screen. Joanne, I know that you said that that was an option. Am I permissed? Can I go for it? Great. Thank you all. So let me just share with you. Sorry, everybody. Okay. And I will say, as an introduction, as I'm working through technology to share my screen, I am one of the working mothers, so I also appreciate Superintendent Thiele joining, and I would say I also am appreciative of all the teachers. It's been a tremendous lift. All right, I just pressed share. Hold, please. Did it come through? Can folks see that?
Yes, it just popped up.
Okay, and I'm going to turn my camera off. So, okay, I don't. All right, so going forward, I just wanted to kick it off by saying again, thank you, Madam Mayor, and to the task force for having me. I appreciate the opportunity, and I also want to just take the time to cover a couple things and review with you what I want to cover. So first of all, as I mentioned, and as I was introduced, I am the Director of Government Affairs and External Affairs here in Washington, and also a proud Issaquah resident. So I understand the urgency and need for just connectivity and the importance right now with everybody, all of us that I see on your image of your camera working from our homes and doing our best to be connected, whether it be to a job or to school or just resources. So I'm excited to share just some updates with you. First of all, I just want to share a little bit of share a little bit of updates, just generally speaking in regards to Comcast and our network overall. And then I want to just talk a little bit specific around Issaquah. And then I will share also some updates around the work we're doing to provide internet to students and affordable internet at that for various families. And then last but not least, I'll kind of wrap up with some resources that might be available just for folks to be aware of and or for future reference. Great. So I can probably make this full screen, folks. Let me see if I can do full screen. full screen. Let's try that. Let me see if that makes it a little better for you. Is that better? Okay.
That is, thank you.
Yes, thanks. So this is it's very busy, but it's also just really talking about the network. You heard about, there's a common theme that I want to kind of bring over from Superintendent Thiele is it's complicated. I mean, things happened quickly, and we basically have been running and making sure that our network is up to the par and the needs for what's been happening since COVID began, pandemic and quarantine. And so I think top line, just kind of share with you some updates is, as mentioned, we're seeing an unprecedented shift in our network usage, not to be surprised by anybody here. And understanding that, the speeds and the capacity, the customers, generally speaking, they're working. People are on calls like this, they're learning, they're being connected. Overall, we're seeing, the traffic across most markets it has plateaued and is kind of leveling off now as we head into, the fall. And a couple other things just to call out is, how we typically run our network is we already sort of ratcheted up, meaning we add capacity to the network so that if extra room, so meaning if there were to be some urgent situation, not planning on a pandemic, but that is what happened, that essentially the network was prepared. And so because of that, the network has held up. Now, that to be said, there has been some opportunities for us to come in and make some enhancements, and that I'll share with you next. But, it's working. You're seeing here that usage is up across the board. We're seeing that Wi-Fi usage has really increased, while we're seeing cell phone usage go down because people aren't out and about as much. And then just the network is constantly being monitored. We have engineers that are constantly looking at it, monitoring it, and doing our best to kind of adjust as needed and to see how we can do adjustments on the back end without having to impact the end user. That all said, I just want to show this is a very simplistic view because, again, I just want to repeat what the superintendent said, that it's complicated. Getting a network to a home and providing technology, I wish it was as simple as ordering a package from Amazon. And I shared this with Mayor Pauly and Autumn earlier, but it's technology and it's just a bit more complicated. So this is a very simplistic representation of essentially how services get to your home. There is a node, and this node or a node connects and provides service to an area in a community, which I'll share with you next, specific to Issaquah. And so it's providing services, as you can see here, to these homes or these locations. And so there's a number of different nodes throughout, and then off of each node, there's these different legs or different runs. And so how we help that, when I talk about monitoring the network, is we kind of look to see how we're balancing out the legs of each node and adjusting, so where a home is on each node, if that's necessary, to kind of just keep it leveled and adjusted based on what we're seeing for usage. So it's very high level, but I think the visual might help a little bit. And then what I want to share with you, I'm sorry I don't know if I'm going to be able to toggle here. I wanted to share with you specific to Issaquah. So let me see if I can do this. Oops, that's my next page. Sorry, folks, I have to toggle to a different spreadsheet here. Here we go. Okay. Let me go back to full screen. Okay. So what you're looking at here is, this is a confidential and proprietary map. So Autumn and Mayor Pauly, this may be a little bit different as far as it's not as descriptive as what I shared with you folks. But what you're looking at here, and I do apologize that it's a little bit tiny, but ultimately what you need to look at is I've highlighted two main areas. This is one highlighted area, and that is an area that a node would serve. And you're kind of seeing these black outlines, and that's where another node would serve. And then this is over here, the Squawk Mountain, where that node would serve. And so I highlighted that these two areas are nodes. We call them nodes or areas, as mentioned, where we recently had some capacity strain. And we worked through this area here. We were able to add, I showed that visual of what is called a node, and we were able to add another node, which helps offset some of that capacity. But I do want to call out that, as mentioned, there's nodes all throughout here, and they're all functioning and they're working. Now we're seeing ebbing and flowing of the network, and that's where we adjust it. But in this node, I say node generically, of those legs that I showed, only one of those legs was having capacity issues. So generally speaking, we were able to add another node to offset that leg that was having the capacity issues. So that's what we're seeing. And this one's completed. This area over here was completed, I think, 2 weeks ago now. And then over here into Squawk Mountain, which I know is, I understand the need for this to have, you know, the most optimum services possible. This area is in process currently, and I'll high level the background on this one. To do the work that is required to build out another node in this area, we do have to have a permit from PSE. And so because that was scheduled to be out, we weren't scheduled to have the permit back for the work until February of 2021, which many of you probably just gasped. But don't worry, we went back and we reevaluated, and just based on the sheer need and what's going on, we're going to adjust that, and we're going to adjust from doing something on a PSE pole, and we're going to directly permit with the city of Issaquah, and we'll be doing underground work for the work that needs to happen to build out the network in this area up here in Squawk Mountain. So that is currently sitting in a permit with the city, which my understanding is they're expecting to hopefully complete the review by the end of this week, which means we would start work next week. So that area could see enhancements as early as next week, assuming permitting and everything goes as planned. So that's the most complicated. I know it's complex, but I do want to just highlight, this is the map. And then as I was talking, before I jump into some other resources I do want to share with you, and I've shared this before, and resources that we'll get into is just because it is complicated, it's not always the network, unfortunately or fortunately, that sometimes it can be a number of other variables that happen in between here and here that makes it complex sometimes, where the assumption is that it's the network, and then sometimes it's the equipment, sometimes it's the infrastructure of the home and where things are set up. And so it's something that I will provide some resources and maybe some, kind of links to provide some resource options so that if anybody is to having those questions, how they can potentially do a quick troubleshoot on their own to determine if maybe it's something that they can resolve on their own, or if it's something that it does require us having a technician or whatnot come in. And then what I did want to touch on, and I think it's really important to talk about that Superintendent Thiele was here as well, which we have a program called Internet Essentials, and we've had this program for 10 years now, and it's our affordable internet program. And this program is very important. It's been important for 10 years, but it's really important right now. And what this program does is it really addresses the primary or key three barriers to connectivity. And those typically are cost. So it's being able to afford the monthly cost. It's having access to equipment and or affording that equipment. And then also just if you achieve the first two, having the understanding of how to use the equipment and the internet once you do obtain it. And so this program covers those three different areas or barriers to entry. And the program is $9.95 per month. There's no term, there's no contract term, there's no credit check, there's no fee for installation. The speeds are 25.3. It does include in-home Wi-Fi, and it also includes unlimited access to the external or outdoor Wi-Fi hotspots. So it's been a really important product right now. Something to share is that we have partnered, as part of 3 other vendors with the Office of the Superintendent for Public Construction, we are providing Internet Essential services throughout the state to various school districts. We're providing the first 2 months for free, and then OSPI is covering the remainder of the bill to support students' need for connectivity through the end of the 2020-21 school year. So it's been a very busy time for this program and a very important time for this program. And so I want to share this with you. If anybody feels that this is something they would like to share with either a community or within, I know this Issaquah is included in the program for the Office of the Superintendent. So I just think this is important to know. I will just call out also, this is available in various languages. We have support for up to 240 languages, as well as in language as well for the application and support. So just a really important program that a lot of people just are not aware of. And then as I wrap up, I just want to share some resources for you. And Adam, I don't know if you or folks want to share this in the chat. I'm happy to share them as well after the meeting. But ultimately, xfinity.com/hub is a fantastic, just all-encompassing place to go, where you can find a number of resources, you search, you can find ways to make sure that your home signal is set up and that that's been optimized. You can also do some troubleshooting. There's a service outage map that you can look at. And again, it does require you to have credentials as a customer. And then the status center is also a great place to go as a customer. It allows you to kind of look and get updates on your connectivity, your services, your network, et cetera. And then one thing I also wanted to provide was, the other thing is, I mentioned it down here, is My Account app. So if you're a customer, there's an application that you use oftentimes to pay a bill. For some of you that have, XFi or the XFi Home app, which allows you to control usage on your devices, et cetera. That's another great resource. And how the network is built is that you as the end user, the subscriber, will be notified of an outage before anybody else. So I just want to share that because that's how the network is built, is to notify the subscriber and the individual using the network of the concern or the issue with the network. So oftentimes, as customers will know before, internally the engineers, and we have a building or an engineer group called the XOC that watches and maintains the network, and they'll be notified. But as far as the city being notified or whatnot, the customers will know before the city will ever know, simply because the network is built that way. It is built to inform the person that's using the network. So I just want to share that because I think sometimes that's helpful when folks are reaching out to the city and the city has not been made privy because it's intended to inform the end user first. So I will stop sharing my screen and I'm happy to pivot over, Mayor Polly, to any questions or if we have time.
Thank you, Carla. One thing the pandemic and the economic crisis and everything has done, it's changed the hierarchy of needs. And, broadband at home now is one of the most important things for your job, for your children's education. I just wanted to follow up on one question I had for you a few weeks ago, and that is, thank you for the resources. We will definitely make sure that if there are supportive resources, we include them on our website.
Yes.
We've got a bunch of stuff up there. Second, I had asked if it was possible to communicate with a neighborhood where work is being done through, I think it was, I can't remember what you said it was, myaccount.com or whatever. Is it possible to let folks on Squawk Mountain with service know about the plan?
Yes, and you did bring that up, so thank you for the reminder. So I'm looking into what options we have for that, and I will tell you, specific to Squawk Mountain, we will most likely be either doing a notification to their app or a follow-up letter of sorts, a hard letter that kind of indicates the work. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We'll get into some questions right now first and comments. Marisol, you're up first.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. This is Marisol Fischer, and actually it's a question more than a comment. So you were talking about the essentials internet, and last time I checked, I know that usually if the family fell behind in any payment, they were not eligible to have the essential. Is this still the case?
That's a great question, Marisol, and thank you for asking, because that has completely been waived, and that is not a policy right now based on the current crisis. So if you have any past due balance, if it's $100 or less, we'll completely pay it off or just put you current at zero. If it is above $100, then we still pay it off or bring you current, and then we put you back into a payment plan if that's necessary. If we pay off $100 and then the remainder above 100 would go into a payment plan. So that is not a policy or an eligibility requirement right now. So I think that's a great point, and thank you for asking.
Great question. Next up, we have Nina.
Hello, thank you. This is Nina Milligan. Thank you, Carla, for this information and the presentation. I have a question that's kind of taking a step back a little bit. I'd like to learn more about how a cable provider like Comcast, what is the handshake with the city and what sort of expectations are on both sides as far as maybe performance standards or, how does Comcast uphold its end of the deal and what is the deal? I'm a little unclear about how franchises work.
I'm happy to, I just want to make sure, Mayor Polly, you don't want to, I'm happy to take that, but because you did address as a city handshake. So there's no handshake. Essentially is, to your point, we are a cable franchisee. So we do a cable, we sign a cable franchise and agreement with the city. And as part of that, just to kind of, I don't want to get too in depth here, but it is specific to cable services. So as far as internet services, just as a clarity, cable is federally regulated. And so it is a FCC regulation. And then as part of that, there's been some updates or changes this year and some reaffirmations with orders. And this year there was a reaffirmation with what's called the 621 order that essentially indicates that through our cable facilities, we can provide mixed use or other products and services. And so as far as our contract or agreement with the city, it's specific to cable facilities and cable services. And then Autumn, I see you. I'll let Autumn join in if she wants to add anything to that.
That's exactly right. Yes, it's just limited to cable, not to internet service. That said, we do have a great relationship with Comcast, and Carla and her team have been responsive. And we've expressed concerns from many residents, specifically on Squaw Mountain, about internet service. And so I'm grateful that the work is, some of it's completed and more is underway. And I'm excited that Carla came and spoke to this group, because I'll be sharing this video with our Squaw Mountain neighbors via Nextdoor very soon. So that will be the first start of our outreach and kind of closing the loop on what Comcast has done and improvements that will be coming soon.
And thank you, Autumn. I appreciate your partnership.
And Carla, we have a couple more questions for you. Next, Sashi, followed by Ron.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Carla. It was very good information. I have comment and maybe a question too about your IE, Internet Essential. It looks pretty attractive, like $10 for 25 Mbps. I didn't understand that /3, but my experience in general with any company is that if they say we are giving you 25 Mbps, the real speed is always much less, 10, 15 for download. And for upload, if they say it's 10, it will be like 3 to 5. And that's with not only Comcast, with also other company. And so now imagine a household, they fit into your criteria for low income. I hope you have updated that, which is around, I think it's almost, I think it's around $59,000 income per year. It's been updated now after 1989. So I don't know about your criteria, but I hope it is a correct one. So imagine a family with 3 to 4 children, all going to school, all are working on the same internet at the same time. The speed will be still low and they'll be frustrated. How are you going to help them?
Yeah, Shashi, I think that's a good question. I can't speak to advertised speeds or something that I hear you. And what I would tell you is I shared with you the complexity of our network, and there's just so many variables that just on this call I can't say what might be causing that. What I can speak to though is in regards to, you make a really a point that I work in every day is around families right now and understanding the connectivity. And so what I would tell you is this is where I want to be very clear that this is not a competitive play. This is where all telecom, wireless, wireline, any kind of service provider needs to step up and provide similar programs. And so between the hotspots, and we're partnering across the state, and I will tell you, I just got off this phone this morning with Franklin Pierce School District, and they're kind of figuring out how many hotspots they give to these students and how many can they do with Internet Essentials. So what I would tell you is it's a collective effort across all of the providers. And I would say right now, my understanding is similar programs to Internet Essentials. I think Wave might offer one. I'm not privy to many outside of the wireless. I know T-Mobile announced one, which is great. So what I would say is it's a collective effort, and this is not about competition. It's just understanding all the resources available and having everybody come to the table to help out right now.
Thank you, Carla. Ron, you get the last question of the day, I believe, for Carla.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you very much, Carla, for coming today. I'm one of those Comcast users on Squaw Mountain that has had a lot of significant problems with bandwidth. So my job requires use of Skype and Zoom, mostly Skype. Skype is a very bandwidth intensive application. What is the recommended megabit package to use Skype and Zoom? how does neighborhood volumes affect the performance? So in other words, if I want to make sure that I'm not having an interrupted application without spending hundreds of dollars on bandwidth, what is the best package to have? And then 2, does Comcast have any plans to go 5G?
Wow. Okay. I'm going to start with the end of your question just because so 5G. Well, I'm trying to think. It gets a little complex. So 5G, I would say, let me share. We do have a mobile product, which is Xfinity Mobile. And as far as that program, it uses, and we partner with the Verizon network. So that does use 5G in the networks, in the neighborhoods or communities that Verizon offers 5G from a wireless perspective. Comcast doing our own 5G, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about what that looks like going down the road. I would say, and I do think it's important to mention though, our entire network across any zip code, anywhere that we provide service, it's gigabit capable. And so that's an important note because it's not certain pockets where there's a certain kind of network. Anywhere that anyone has Comcast service has capabilities of having up to gig services. And the network in place today supports up to 10 gig, and that's being reviewed right now in Cable Labs. So I would tell you, I don't know what that looks like, but I know there's a ton of road mapping and testing going on. As far as the package, it's a really good question. I would tell you that I do know, because to your point, I oftentimes turn my video off just to save on certain calls. What I would say is I have some guidelines or kind of structures of what is supported by, for example, the 25.3 that we provide for Internet Essentials supports up to multiple Zoom calls for families with children. And so I have some guidance around how much usage those different programs take up, if you will. And I'm happy I can provide that after this call, and that can help guide
That would be great.
Your package. Yeah.
Thank you, Carla. And thank you for coming today. This has been a hot topic in our town and probably everywhere for 5 or 6 months. As soon as we realized that we're all going to be working from home and teaching from home and visiting our family from home. So thank you for coming today. Your presentation was very good. Thank you for all the resources and also for the work that you're doing to help those that cannot afford the tools that they need to keep things going. So thank you for that. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for having me. And if any folks on this call have questions, Autumn has my contact information, and I'll share everything I shared today with the call with Autumn.
And fun fact, Carla does live in Taos, which is really close by. So she knows all about our community. So thank you very much, Carla.
Thank you.
Looking back down onto our lengthy agenda that is still in front of us, we may have to shorten a few of these. We have 3 more items. Autumn is taking the Halloween How to Safely Celebrate, and we also have something on 211 services, and then we want to spend a few minutes talking about Task Force Pre-Recovery Work Plan. So we'll go to Autumn next, Halloween and How to Safely Celebrate.
Thank you, Mayor Polly. So I'll be quick. I'm here today to talk about a very popular topic right now among our neighborhoods, and that's how to celebrate Halloween safely. And I'm going to share my screen. So according to the CDC, participating in traditional trick-or-treating is considered a high-risk activity during the pandemic. We were looking for more local guidance, and thankfully the Washington State Department of Health did come out with some more recommendations earlier this week, and also is discouraging trick-or-treating. So as our community plans for fall celebrations, we at the city are promoting ideas on lower risk activities. So we've built a webpage with a whole bunch of ideas, and just wanted to walk through a few of these with the task force today. The first is the idea of booing your neighbors. And this is a tradition in many neighborhoods here in Issaquah, including mine. I know it's also very popular in the Highlands and in Tallis and in South Cove. The idea is that you select a few neighbors that don't have booed signs in their windows and safely package some gifts for them. It can be little treats that are prepackaged or cards or decorations. And you also include a copy of this sign, which we have designed one here for specifically for Issaquah. and you secretly deliver these surprises to your neighbors. And the idea is that your neighbors will then pass it on, so that by Halloween, most of your neighbors have received some kind of treat or some kind of thoughtful gift in your neighborhood. So we're hoping folks, as they take photos and they receive their gifts from neighbors, use the hashtag IssaquahBoo. And I've heard that in the Highlands specifically, you'll see a lot of these posters already up, so people are already booing their neighbors. We will be doing a lot of promotion around this idea, and we just finished up a little video, which I wanted to show you guys quickly, that we'll be posting to help promote the idea. So we have also seen some folks have already posted photos of their own gifts they've received, and so that we'll be continuing to share images and just kind of the neighborly love that's going on here in Issaquah. As far as other ideas, we also created an outdoor scavenger hunt for kids. You can print this out as well on our website and walk around your neighborhood and have your kids find all of these different types of decorations out and about. There are a ton of virtual events happening in Issaquah involving Halloween. So our favorite zombie walk that's produced by the Downtown Issaquah Association is going virtual this year. In addition, Erica, who is the director of the Issaquah History Museums, is doing guided tours at Hillside Cemetery. And then the King County Library System is offering a large series of virtual classes and programs and fun craft activities that you can do with your kids all online. So we will continue to update our webpage, which is issaquahwa.gov/Halloween, with all of these opportunities to get involved in the holiday. And then we are also promoting a few other ways of just traditional celebrations. So carving pumpkins, trying to upstage your neighbors on Halloween decorations. And the one that my family will be doing at home is at-home trick-or-treating. So we plan to hide candy throughout our yard and our house for our kids to find on Halloween. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions.
That is great, Autumn. News flash, my husband has now placed his 175-pound pumpkin on the right-of-way, and he's going to put out a sign that the great pumpkin has arrived, so maybe we'll take a picture of that. He lost the competition to my son, whose pumpkin is 675 pounds, and also just on the little boulevard in front of his house. But anyway, people are finding fun things to do this year, and Halloween will be fun, for sure. I see a question from Jason.
Thank you, Mayor Polly, and thank you, Ms. Monahan. Just FYI, I'm going this year as 2020. Scare the hell out of people. But elections, pandemics, vaccinations, oh my. So I'm wondering, as far as still having little kids out there dressing up, I mean, my guess is people are still going to be walking around with children, even if they're doing this Boo campaign, which I think is wonderful. Who knows, could actually change the way we trick or treat in the future. But is there any appetite from the city to put signage around or actually close down streets that are feasible from a certain, like maybe from 5 to 10, to allow social distancing on certain streets? I know we did it with the streetery. That was very well received. And again, just so they can social distance, they're all going to be wearing masks, right? So that's the good point. That's the good part. They're all going to be behind some type of protection, but that way they're not crowding on sidewalks and things like that. I don't know. I don't know what type of volume we're going to see with people dressed up. It's apparent if people are going to dress up, they're going to want to go outside. And I don't know if they're going to stick around simply in their yards. So I don't know if there's an appetite for that, to just one night only from 6 to 10 or from 5 to 10, close down certain high traffic streets where the kids and the families can walk around without bumping into people to do the Boo campaign and things like that.
City Minister Bobkowitz has popped up on the screen.
Thanks, Jason, for the comment. We've been talking about Halloween internally since July, and we've been very concerned about anything that we would do that would encourage gatherings. And certainly the Center for Disease Control guidance really has been our guidance. So while I think it's a tremendous idea, and I think that, in the future, we probably should be doing that anyway for Halloween under more normal circumstances, that this probably just isn't the year. So it's so important to keep people safe. We haven't really talked about the health aspects, the current health aspects of the virus. We're seeing more cases in King County. Fortunately, not so much here in Issaquah, but we're just really reluctant to do any more. And we settled on the boot campaign that Autumn just described as something that would be fun for people. And I think we're going to leave it at that. And hopefully that next year, this will all be behind us, hopefully, and we can rethink lots of fun ways for people to celebrate Halloween.
Jason, I appreciate the question. One thing I've heard from neighborhoods is that we need to make it easier for them to do stuff like that. So even before COVID, we're trying to figure out a way to make it easy for a neighborhood to ask us how they can close a portion of their neighborhood or road for an event like that. So that's on our radar to make easier anyway, because it's a great way to go out and see neighbors, especially if you don't have a park right in your neighborhood. So I'm not seeing any other questions. Andrea from King County is also here to talk about little echo, 211. Wally or Autumn? Any introductions?
Yes, Madam. Mayor, let me give a try with that.
Andrea, I think I'm going to have to get you to go back on mute for a bit.
All right, there we go. Again, the task force at your last meeting raised the issue about what kind of messaging should we be doing in the community when we see people in need. And we reached out to King County 211. This is a wonderful service that is provided not only in our community, but in communities around America to provide resources and connecting people with resources. And so we asked Andrea Jackson-King from King County, or excuse me, Andrew Jackson from King County 311 to come join us today, talk a little bit about their services and how they're encouraging people with these kind of issues to use 311 as a resource. So, Andrea, welcome, and I'll let you get on with your presentation.
Thank you so much for having me today. So I appreciate that. King County 211 or 211 has certainly been challenged this afternoon, and I do appreciate you all inviting me to talk a little bit about what we've seen in the months and days and weeks since we all started in this new adventure and journey that we are on. So that has certainly been quite a challenge for all of us. Am I sharing my screen? I'm sorry.
You're not, Andrea.
Okay, hang on a second. Went away. Okay, so I did have a few slides, and I have lost my pop-up. Okay, so I'll just go through a few things and try to address the questions that were presented to me about 211 and the programs and services that we were offered, that we offer. And 211, particularly in King County, is part of Crisis Connections. And this organization has a number of services that they offer, including King County 211, but including the crisis line, which is a 24-hour helpline for individuals with immediate or imminent mental health needs. It is also a partner affiliation with the National Suicide Prevention Line. The Washington Recovery Helpline is a statewide substance abuse line. And then we have a warm line for veterans and Teen Link, which is a chat and text services for teens experiencing mental health crises. And certainly what we have seen during this pandemic is an increase in contacts and requests from teens. The impact has been fairly significant. We find that this line has been growing since the pandemic and with schools being closed. And so with 211 services, initially, we've been information and referral resources for the state, primarily There are 7 different 211 call centers or contact centers located around our state. And we have worked as a statewide network to all be on one platform. So if you are a resident here in our city and then you have maybe you have parents in Eastern Washington, we're able to help you with resources there and connect them. As part of that, shortly after the closures and the shutdown, the Department of Health reached out to 211 and asked if we could handle the COVID-19 hotline because they were just inundated with calls. And so if you can imagine, in March, prior to the shutdown, we were averaging at about 800 calls a day. And in a matter of about 3 days, we went to about 3,000 calls a day. So we have leveled off now and are back to about 1,200 calls a day, but we were very busy there for a while. And so following that, as the COVID cases have gotten grown in certain counties, we are also operating the state COVID hotline in Yakima, Benton, and Franklin County. We answer that line, the intake line for them. And we also handle the Washington Listen support line. So we have a number of phone lines that we offer and support through the COVID that are focused specifically on COVID-19, in addition to our normal services. Our other service offerings in 211 for our county include we are a CLC intake point. We do intake forms and application processing for basic food benefits. And one of the impacts of COVID-19 that we have seen, particularly in almost every county, and particularly on the east side, is an increase in callers seeking food resources or food vouchers. And these are new entrants to this social services world, to this world. This is oftentimes the first time they've had to apply for benefits or want to have questions about the process. So we have seen an increase in basic food intake, and that has continued even to today. That is, as recently as last week, it still falls in our in our top 3. We provide housing stability project support, and as part of our expansion with COVID-19 support, we actually helped process applications, rental assistance applications for United Way. Again, taking the back end and actually entering applications for individuals that could not access a computer or that had equity issues. We will also be doing this again for King County, starting with this latest announcement, and we will be an intake form for rental assistance applications. We support housing justice through the Housing Justice Project and offer legal referrals there. We are partners there. And then, as I said, the statewide COVID-19 hotline is our other service offering for this year. So, as we go through this process, our support line continues to see callers from teens, elderly. Our top 3 demographics are teens, elderly, and widows. And so we have seen quite a few people just suffering from loneliness across the state. So those have been our 3 profiles. And then we have obviously some very good demographic reporting that I can go into and provide, but I thought that this meeting might be a little too much detail for this meeting. And some of our top, I did go ahead and pull from the city of Issaquah, our top 5 reasons for calling. So it's rent payment assistance, housing and shelter needs, food vouchers, low income and subsidized rental assistance. And then on the rise and continuing to start to increase here in the last 10 days has been utility payment assistance. And so I suspect as the cold snap begins and some of the cooler temperatures have started, we are starting to see an increase in those numbers as well. So we expect that to continue, and we'll hopefully be finding funding for those callers as well. As we have worked through 2020, and we are operating right now at about a 73% increase in contacts from residents in the county. And we continue, we expect that number to continue. So I'm sorry that I was unable to share the screen, but I do want to leave just a few minutes to answer questions and be respectful of the time as well of the meeting. So I'll stop talking now. And if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
That is great. Can I get you to go on mute as well? Until that's perfect. Thank you. That information was super helpful. I would love it if you could share your slideshow with Autumn Monahan, and she will make sure that all the task force members get to see the data. I am very personally interested in the Issaquah data. Our human services staff would love to know, to be able to see the trends and where assistance is needed. You know, we are hoping to receive some additional CARES Act funding in the future, and knowing that utilities is starting to become a big thing would be very helpful for us. So any data you have, Issaquah specific, would be great. I'm not seeing any questions right now, but I really want to, oh, I got one. Jason, you're up.
Thank you again, Mayor Pauley, and thank you, Ms. Jackson, for the holy work that you and your organization continue to do on behalf of our communities and our state. I guess my question for you, Ms. Jackson, is my guess is you guys probably get grants, but is there, being a nonprofit, do you guys have the ability to accept donations, and how do you guys advertise that? How do you guys get that information out? Because a lot of people use 211 services, but for those of us who are fortunate enough not to, never really heard of it, and how can you help? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. So we just had our virtual event last week. We do have an annual fundraiser, and we do accept donations. Our website is www.crisisconnections.org, and we certainly accept private donations and are grateful for those. We have some funding that comes from the state of Washington as well as part of the broader Washington State 211 network. And then we do apply for grants, levy dollars, and various federal funds that are available. And so, for example, we are operating with FEMA and SAMHSA, the Mental Health Association. We have a grant that is supporting part of our line, our support line now, for callers that have been impacted by COVID-19 and just want some assistance there. So we take all sources.
Great. Thank you for that. Pavel looks like he has a question.
Yes, thank you, Andrea, for your presentation. So I was actually wondering if you receive any phone calls from businesses for help, and if you do, what type of businesses they are.
We do receive calls from businesses. I will tell you that in this year, since March, the majority of the calls from businesses have been about things like the paycheck replacement program, those small business programs that have been announced in the community. How can I apply? We do have a few that have come through that want to know what other programs are out there. But those have primarily come through the COVID-19 hotline, and how do we take care of our employees? We have had a few that will call 211 for like utility assistance, but primarily it has been things related to the governor's order, related to what phase they're in, what they can and cannot do, and what protections they need to put in place for their employees. So the businesses that have been fortunate enough to remain open or reopen, we're calling to find out what requirements they were obligated to do to keep their employees and their customers safe.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Jackson, for coming and sharing that information today. We have been so fortunate with this team to get some great speakers to share community information. It's been great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I'm going to go down to our last item now and give our city administrator 4 minutes and 30 seconds to go through the task force pre-recovery work plan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, we worked hard at this meeting to have information that you all were asking for at your last meeting, and so hopefully we've been able to do that. But as you recall, the broader topic last time was how to move forward, what would make sense on sort of a broad basis for next steps. And I included in your packet is the mayor's proposal and what to do along those lines. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we can talk a little bit about this. I think that we will spend more time on this in the month of November. We'll go ahead and have a meeting in November, and really this afternoon, I would hope that we could identify members of this task force that would be interested in serving on a community health subcommittee that we could convene once or twice between now and your next meeting to begin talking about what specific tasks we want to identify for the city to accomplish in the first 6 months of 2021. What this proposal does with the mayor, from the mayor, is ask 6 of our boards and commissions who focus on the areas that the Recovery Task Force has been focused on to talk amongst themselves over the next couple of months, and then be prepared to come back to the task force on January 14th with recommendations of specific tasks we should focus on that would be included in the City Council's 2021 work plan. And so this would include our Economic Vitality Commission, the Human Services Commission, our Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. This group is responsible for allocating the lodging tax that's collected here to support our tourist serving businesses, our Park Board, our Transportation Advisory Board, and our Youth Advisory Board. So the thought was, if this makes sense for the Recovery Task Force, that we would come back with the chairs of those groups or representatives from each of those groups in November for sort of a larger discussion on some of these specifics, then have the groups come back to the task force in January, and then have the task force make those recommendations to the City Council. They will likely have a work session toward the end of January to finalize a work plan for 2021. The one piece that doesn't fit any of our boards and commissions is the community health piece. So again, Madam Mayor, if we could ask for some volunteers today, and we'll work to get that group together in the next 30 days. And then finally, a recommendation to refresh our communications plan. We've been kind of at a dead run since March with our communications plan. So I've asked Autumn Monahan, our assistant to the city administrator, to rethink some of the messaging, and we would come back to this recovery task force with some ideas in November. So again, have a meeting in November to talk about next steps, probably take the month of December off, come back in January with the specific task recommendations, and then have those come to the full council at the end of January. So got 2 minutes left, Madam Mayor. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, City Administrator Bobkowitz. I was typing in the chat box. I was just going to do a real quick go around the table and have people individually say 2 thumbs up or I have a comment or whatever. So let's just start with Pavel. What do you think about the plan?
You're on mute, Pavel.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So I think it's a very good plan. We should definitely take on that. I would love to be part of it, but unfortunately, I just got a job offer at Department of Medicine at the UW. And fortunately, I will not be able to join, but I think it's absolutely right way to go.
Thank you, Pavel, and congratulations. Jason.
Thank you again. Well, I appreciate all the hard work that the city staff has done, including Administrator Bobkowitz, who worked so hard to present us with such great information. The plan looks great. I think in November to meet with the heads of these different commissions and committees to see how they can help improve the work that we've begun back at the beginning of June. Would be good. Taking December off for the holidays seems nice. And then having some referral to the city council to see if we can actually implement it into their scope of work for 2021, because it is going to be a part of our lives for at least a little longer, is good. As far as the community health, I'd be happy to help. I just would need to know what day and time.
Great.
That would be the only thing, but otherwise I'd be happy to help. So well done, guys. And yeah, looks good.
We will send that out by email to everybody, but it's likely probably date and time we're talking about now. It's more frequency that we'll have to talk about. Well, thank you, Jason. Grace.
Yeah, just echoing everyone else's thoughts. I think the timeline looks good, like kind of the time structure and how you guys have like allocated it out. And yeah, I think when you guys send out the email and I can look at it a little bit more in detail and see all of it, I might have questions later, but right now I don't.
Thank you, Grace. Mike.
Yeah, I think the target areas that you identified in the plan make sense to me, and the timeline. All things happening, it's a lot of work to squeeze in there, but I think it's doable, and hitting a recommendation to the council by end of January seems to feel about right.
Thank you, Mike. Nina.
Hi, yes, I'm here. This is Nina Milligan. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. You guys have laid out a good plan. The question that popped up into my mind was, how does our recommendations for the citywide work plan in 2021 work with other people's work plans? And, when are they going to conflict? Who's got the priority? All that kind of stuff.
Good question. Thank you, Nina. Shashi.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Yeah, it looks good that we can plan, and we of course have to be very careful. We are not yet there where we should totally open. So to go ahead, if any help required from my side, I'm always there. Thank you.
Thank you, Shashi. Marlene?
I have nothing to add at this time. Looks good. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron?
Hi, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much. And thank you, Bob Mott. Sorry, Bob. Question. I'm looking at, it looks great, but on item 1, number E, Transportation Advisory Board, what would the Transportation Advisory Board have to do with the Road to Recovery? And then 2, would we want to add the Highlands Council to this? Because Highlands Council looks like it might fit with the commissions that you've already chose, even though it's not
5 more minutes.
Commission.
Thanks for those comments. I think as I reviewed the tape of the last meeting, there was a lot of talk about what are we doing to help people get out and about as far as paths and trails and biking and walking. And so as the Mobility Master Plan has been finalized, there are many points in there regarding that. As we look and see what priorities there should be for 2021, I thought it would be good to have the Transportation Advisory Board make some recommendations as to some prioritization. They're going to be doing that anyway, looking at 2021, but I think with a lens of the recovery task force issues, I think makes sense. As far as involving other groups, I think the idea with the city boards and commissions was to keep this within the city government advisory groups. Certainly the Highlands Council, other business associations, the Chamber, downtown Issaquah, we've got other homeowners associations scattered around. Maybe that's a next step with this, but I think as some folks have mentioned, it's kind of a tight time frame, so we wanted to propose something that we thought we could do within, what would be 4 weeks, more or less from now.
I agree.
City Administrator Bob Quitz, I want to add to that as well. Autumn has been working really hard on a neighborhood champions program where we're trying to create the energy in the community where the neighborhoods are actually cross-pollinating each other with information. And it may be that we can take some of the information that comes out of our work and pass it to that neighborhood champions group and allow them to decide the best way to communicate it out. Either they do next door or they're having a board meeting or something. But yeah, we need to make sure that they're engaged in some way in this communication loop. So thank you for that suggestion.
I'll try to remember to pronounce your name correctly. Sorry.
Wally
Bob Quitz.
Bob Quitz.
like Bob quits his job.
Bob quits his job. There you go. You'll never forget it now.
Thank you.
Don't you dare quit your job. That would not be a good thing. So I have just a couple of quick little announcements at the end. Really, the first 3 are congratulations. Pavel, so excited to hear about your job offer. Well done. Good for you. I have been chatting a lot with Grace lately. Grace has just received notification that she's going to have a fantastic internship in New York City next summer. And so proud of her and so grateful for all the work that she's done here. And also congratulations for Marisol. Marisol Visser was just hired by the city to complement our human services team, and we are so excited to have her. It's a part-time position, but the voice, the community voice that she brings to our work is fantastic. So 3 congratulations out there. And then my final thing is, as our meetings seem to spread out a little bit more, you really need to know that this has just been an absolutely inspirational group of people. A real best cross-section I've ever worked with of our community. And so thank you for everything that you've done. Sorry we kept you 6 minutes over today, but you had so many good questions. We just couldn't pass up on them. So thank you all. And I think the next meeting, Molly announced it, is November 12th at 4 p.m. I'll see you there. Thank you, everyone.